a young woman walked down the dark and deserted hallway. She entered the house, eating an apple, while looking around with a suspicious expression. However, she did not notice that someone was watching her outside. Suddenly, the woman saw blood on the floor. She began to feel scared, so she stood up to check her surroundings. She slowly walked out to the balcony and was startled and screamed. The apple in her hand also fell to the ground. In front of her was an extremely terrifying scene. A mannequin was hanging. Its eyes seemed to be staring at her. What was even more terrifying was that it was wearing a pink dress exactly like hers. Before the woman could regain her composure, there was a sudden sound of the door locking. Someone was trying to open the door from the outside. She quickly grabbed her tools to defend herself. A man walked in. Only then did the woman lower her weapon. It turned out to be her father. He had left his job at the hospital to go look for his missing eldest daughter. Some time ago, their family bought room 809 at the Rose Villa, but they didn't know that a gruesome murder had happened here because the whole family was on a business trip. The room was only occupied by the eldest daughter, Ji-in. Ji-in is the head of a research institute in the area. Her father and younger sister Gina both went to Busan to work. Their father is the director of a large hospital, and Gina works as a hotel receptionist. Today is Ji-in's birthday, so Gina sent her a bra as a gift. The two sisters are quite close, but because they don't get along with their father, Gina doesn't want to go home. She has been independent since she was young and is working at a famous hotel. Gina has good communication skills, so she can easily satisfy even the most difficult customers. However, the hotel manager did not like Gina because she was afraid that she would soon replace her. Gina was assigned to clean the swimming pool. There, a colleague wondered why Gina's family owned a big hospital while she was working as a receptionist. Gina replied that she did not want to rely on her family. At this time, a female colleague came to Gina. She asked Gina to stand up as a witness to accuse the department head of sexual harassment. Because Gina had witnessed the wrongdoing with her own eyes, Gina was a bit hesitant and asked for more time to think. At that moment, her boyfriend called to ask her to go out for dinner and shopping. Gina's boyfriend is currently working as a pharmacist at a small private hospital. He is not a good person. Actually, he wanted to ask Gina's family to help him get a job at a big hospital. That evening, Gina went to the meeting place. During the meal, Gina's boyfriend mentioned marriage, but she was not ready, so her attitude was a bit unpleasant. To appease Gina, her boyfriend took her shopping. He bought her a pink dress to cheer her up again. Gina also posted the photo on social media and received a lot of likes. There was a mysterious person who wanted to warn Gina to be careful with her boyfriend, but in the end, this person stopped commenting. Meanwhile, Ji-in returned to the Rose Villa after a long day of tiring work. When Ji-in was pressing the elevator button, suddenly a hand reached in to hold the elevator door. It turned out to be a crazy woman who scared Ji-in. Her son apologized to Ji-in and took her away. However, he secretly observed the elevator to see which floor Ji-in was on. He discovered that she was on the 8th floor, so he secretly followed her from afar with bad intentions. Ji-in was about to go on a long business trip. She finished packing and called her boyfriend to let him know. However, while she was waiting for the elevator, a man in a raincoat appeared behind her. Ji-in discovered it and was about to call for help, but it was too late. The next morning, Gina was urged by her father to return to the Rose Villa quickly because he could not contact Ji-in. He was extremely worried about Ji-in's safety. Gina could not ask for leave, so he suggested that her father go check it out himself. But he was also very busy at the hospital, so he forced Gina to go home and immediately hang up. Gina was upset when the head of the department suddenly came to see her. He knew that Gina was asked to be a witness, so he asked her to stay away for a while. Gina wrote a leave request to go back to find her sister. Everyone in the hotel looked at her with contempt. They thought that she was shrinking her responsibility and did not dare to be a witness. Gina did not want to explain to them because her family was more important to her. After finishing her work, Gina went back to her room to prepare her luggage. Then she took the train to the Rose Villa. When she arrived, she was followed by a strange woman without knowing it. Gina found Ji-in's car still parked in the parking lot and wondered why her sister left the house without using the car. Nearby, the crazy woman was sitting next to the car cursing. Gina approached to ask, but the woman immediately ran away. Gina felt uncomfortable. She didn't like going back to the Rose Villa because there were many strange people there. Then she went up to room 809 alone and discovered the creepy mannequin. Luckily, her father also returned at that time. Gina immediately pulled her father out to the balcony. uncertainty. He was also terrified when he saw the mannequin for the first time. He also realized that the pink dress the mannequin was wearing was exactly the same as the dress Gina was wearing. Jian had never bought that type of dress before. The father was about to take the mannequin down, but Gina stopped him. She was afraid of damaging the crime scene. At this moment, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Her father opened the door and knew that the president was looking for her daughter. He asked why, but she just said it was important and then wanted to leave. Seeing that she was trying to avoid him, he pulled her back to ask her in detail. The president had no choice but to admit that she came to pick up Ji-in to go on a blind date with a man named Charlie, but Ji-in did not appear. Ji-in's father continued to question why someone as outstanding as Ji-in would have to go on a blind date, but the president could not answer. She found an excuse and quickly left. Ji-in's father wanted to chase after her, but Gina held him back. Gina reminded her father that the important thing now was to immediately call the police to find Ji-in. Otherwise, Ji-in might be in danger. So Gina and her father went into the elevator together. On the way, Gina discovered that the villa had security cameras installed, so she asked her father to go to the security room to check the video recording. However, the security guard made up enough reasons to refuse. He demanded that police come with a search warrant. Gina's father was furious. Gina quickly pulled her father out, so the two decided to go to the police station. As soon as the two left, the security guard immediately reported to a mysterious person that Gina and her father had just left. The woman continued to follow them secretly, but Gina and her father drove away. Later, the two arrived at the police station. Gina saw that her father could not keep calm, so she had to come forward and make a statement. She showed the police the photos taken at the scene. The policewoman asked Gina to write a statement and go to the second major crime squad downstairs to find Corporal Park Min-soo. Gina did as the policewoman said. She gave the statement to her father to write while she went to find Corporal Park. Gina was then led by the police to Corporal Park's desk. The two greeted each other and went into a private room to talk. Through Gina's story and evidence on her phone, Corporal Park thought she was being followed. Gina was extremely confused. Suddenly, Captain came to find Corporal Park, so he quickly gave Gina his business card and went out to listen to the captain's scolding. Taking that opportunity, Gina stole the list of criminals under Corporal Park's management that she had noticed since entering. Then Gina sneaked out of the police station and returned to the Rose Villa with her father. On the way, her father received a phone call, so he had to get out of the car to answer the phone so that Gina wouldn't know the content of the conversation. But looking at her father's attitude, Gina also guessed that there was something important. She advised her father to return to Busan to finish his work. Gina would go find her sister alone, so he had to entrust Jian to Gina. Then he took Gina back to the Rose Villa, and he went to Busan. Gina returned to her room. She was about to stop by the supermarket to buy some things when she accidentally overheard a conversation between a man named Charlie. Gina remembered that Charlie was the person the president of the Women's Association arranged for her sister to go on a blind date with, so she decided to investigate Charlie. It turned out that he was the son of the supermarket owner because his mother was mentally ill. Charlie took over the management. At this time, his mother brought shits into the supermarket, which made Charlie very angry, so he quickly pulled his mother out. At that moment, Gina sneaked into Charlie's office. She was shocked to find that he had kept a lot of obscene videos on his iPad. Through the supermarket's security camera, Gina discovered that the staff was coming, so she quickly left the office and pretended to be shopping at the checkout counter. Unexpectedly, Gina caught Charlie's eye. He was attracted by Gina's beautiful appearance and wanted to get to know her. But Gina didn't bother talking to him. She immediately left the supermarket and returned to her room. Here, Gina started checking the list of criminals she got from Corporal Park. Most of them were sex criminals. There was only one murderer living in room 603, building 110, also in the Rose Villa. At this moment, a naked young man suddenly appeared in the house. Gina was startled and scared, but it turned out to be the youngest brother who had just come home to get his clothes. He used to live in a boarding dormitory, so he was rarely at home. He didn't even know about Jian's disappearance. Gina showed him the mannequin in the hallway. He guessed that it might have been caused by the neighbor upstairs. Jian had previously complained to the management about the neighbor making noise, so she got angry and took a knife down to the room to attack Jian. Luckily, Jian dodged it. Maybe she was the one who hung the mannequin in the hallway. However, he did not believe that Jian was missing because he could not find her backpack in the house. He speculated that maybe his sister went abroad and forgot to turn on the roaming feature, so her family could not call her. However, the backpack that the youngest brother mentioned was lying in the trash outside the villa. Gina still felt that it was strange that Ji-in did not contact anyone, but the youngest brother did not care. He just wanted to go to the internet cafe to relieve stress. Gina was scared and wanted her brother to stay home with her, but he still ignored her and left the house without looking back. The next morning, the police came to the house. The list of criminals that Gina had stolen was left on the floor, so she quickly put it away and showed the police the blood stains and the mannequin on the balcony. The female police officer also found Gina's phone stuck behind the chair. Corporal Park wanted to take the phone back for analysis. Because Gina uses an iPhone, the analysis may take a long time. Gina urges the police to hurry up because Gina has been missing for 4 days. But that makes the policewoman angry because they are only responsible for assisting the investigation and not for finding missing people. Corporal Park has to step in and encourage Gina. He promises to do his best to find Gina. Only then does Gina feel more secure. However, she knows she cannot rely on them completely, so she decides to investigate herself. Gina goes to room 603, where the murderer on the list lives. The door is covered with people's notes chasing the murderer away. Gina cannot find him in the room. Suddenly, the president of the Women's Association appears and immediately drags Gina away. She warns Gina that the murderer is a psychopath. He not only killed one person, but also a young couple. Everyone wants to chase him out of the Rose Villa. She also remembered that Gian had come into contact with the murderer. That day, he was rummaging through the trash to find food for stray cats. Gian saw him throwing trash around and was annoyed to remind him. When Gian left, the murderer was still staring at her. The president showed Gina the location of the trash dump and told her to be careful. Gina wondered where the murderer usually lived. The president said that he had his own room, but liked to live in a camper. Gina said goodbye to the president and went to the camper. While the murderer was not in the car, she called a locksmith to open the door. After breaking in, Gina discovered the bra she had given Gian on birthday. It was being worn on a teddy bear. Gina carefully took a photo as evidence. Just then, the murderer returned. Gina quickly hid under the table. The murderer discovered that the car door was open and went to close it. Gina realized that she had dropped her phone, so she reached out to pick it up, but unfortunately, the murderer stepped on it. Gina quickly covered her mouth to keep from making a sound. The murderer returned to his seat. Gina also got her phone back. At that moment, someone came to ask the murderer for help because their car broke down, so he agreed to go out. Taking this opportunity, Gina quickly escaped from the car through the back door. She went to a public phone booth and called Corporal Park to report that she had found the suspect who kidnapped her sister. However, at that time, Corporal Park was ambushing a group of human traffickers. Seeing them holding a girl, Corporal Park immediately hung up. He and a female police officer rushed to the rescue. The two fought with 4 criminals. The female police officer had the upper hand, and Corporal Park was beaten with a few sticks because he protected the girl. The female police officer caught one, while the others escaped. Corporal Park chased and caught another. Gina saw that Corporal Park hung up, so she left a message to meet him for coffee. She would come first. On the way, Gina bumped into a female student. The girl dropped her phone and wanted to borrow Gina's phone to find it. Gina helped her find her phone. Gina had no idea that the female student had actually thrown her phone into the grass to get Gina's phone number. Later, Gina met Corporal Park at a coffee shop. She showed him a photo taken in the camper. Gina insisted that only her sister would have the bra because it was a custom-made birthday present for her. Corporal Park decided to go see the murderer and took Gina with her. However, when they arrived, camper had disappeared. Corporal Park followed the tire tracks and discovered that the car was parked in front of the Rose Villa. Corporal Park approached to ask questions, but as soon as he introduced himself as a police officer, the murderer immediately ran away. Corporal Park and Gina split up to chase after him. Unexpectedly, Gina was like an athlete. She continuously jumped over hurdles to block the murderer. He had nowhere to run, so he crawled under the truck and rolled around for a while before escaping. Gina persisted in chasing, but Corporal Park was blocked by a car and lost track of him. Gina finally caught the murderer, but she kept calling for Corporal Park but couldn't find him. Gina's strength was not as good as the murderer's, so he immediately knocked her down and ran into an abandoned house. Gina cautiously followed. Suddenly, he rushed out from the corner. He lifted Gina up and slammed her against the wall. Luckily, Corporal Park appeared in time and saved Gina. He then arrested the murderer for assault. The murderer was taken into the interrogation room. Corporal Park looked at the murderer and became more and more certain that not only had he killed someone, but he was also capable of committing another murder. The reason was that the murderer was mentally ill. In the case of the young couple years ago, just because the wife smiled kindly, the murderer thought that she had feelings for him. When he saw her living happily with her husband, he became jealous and killed both of them. For that crime, he spent 7 years in prison. Returning to the present, the policewoman entered the interrogation room. She showed Ji-in's photo and warned the murderer not to lie. Faced with the onslaught of questions, the murderer remembered the time when he was also forced to confess in the same way. He began to have convulsions and fell to the floor. Seeing him foaming at the mouth, policewoman was extremely surprised. Outside, Corporal Park was also confused. That night, when Gina returned home, her father had just returned. Gina told him everything that had just happened. She emphasized that the suspect this time was the murderer who had committed the murder. Her father was extremely worried about Ji-in. If anything happened to Ji-in, he would not let the murderer be at peace. Even if he had to risk his life with the murderer, because he was so worried, he wanted to go to the police station to interrogate the murderer directly. Gina tried to stop her father, but it only made him more agitated. He shouted that she didn't care about her sister. Gina felt wronged, because her father had never cared about her like that. Since she was little, she let him do whatever he wanted, and she hid in her room to calm down. Her father realized that he had said too much and stood in front of the door to apologize to Gina, but she refused to open the door. Gina was in her room, texting a friend she met online. The two had been talking for a long time, and they got along very well. They also often shared stories about their lives with each other. However, when her friend asked to meet Gina, she refused because she did not want to reveal her true identity. After all, she thought it would be better to be friends online. Then Gina turned off her phone and went to sleep without knowing that her phone had been infected with a virus. Someone was controlling her phone remotely without her knowing. The next morning, Gina received a call from Corporal Park. He asked her to go to the coffee shop the day before to discuss. Here, Corporal Park questioned Gina if she had broken into the camper. Gina had no choice but to admit it. Corporal Park said that the murderer's lawyer had filed a countersuit against Gina for trespassing. The evidence she collected was also destroyed because the lawyer said that it was evidence that Gina had brought into the car herself. Gina was extremely angry, but because she had not told the truth from the beginning, Corporal Park could not help. Gina could even be sentenced to 3 years in prison. Now, if she didn't want to be sued, she had to withdraw her assault lawsuit against the murderer. That meant he would be released. Even though Corporal Park knew for sure that the murderer was involved, Gina felt extremely desperate because there was no way to arrest him unless she had solid evidence, such as security camera footage. Corporal Park's suggestion made Gina suddenly remember that the Rose Villa also had a camera system. However, the guards had refused to let them see it. This time, Corporal Park insisted that there was a way to get the data. First, Gina wanted to go home and tell her father. When she knew that the murderer was released, her father immediately came up with his own plan. He waited for Gina to leave with Corporal Park and then secretly followed the murderer. Seeing the murderer sitting in the camper laughing to himself, the father was extremely angry. Then the murderer drove to a small alley. As soon as he saw a stray cat, his expression suddenly turned hateful. It turned out that when he was young, a cat ate his fish, which caused him to be traumatized. Now he is determined to take revenge on all cats. The blood in Jian's house is not human blood, but cat blood. Suddenly, the murderer disappeared. The father was following him but lost track, so he hurriedly went to look for him and found the murderer torturing a cat with an extremely excited expression. That scene made him feel really creepy. When he finished, the murderer left as if nothing had happened. The father continued to follow him. At the same time, Corporal Park took Gina to meet a fat man. He had 5 criminal records but was a talented hacker. He had the ability to access the entire security camera system in the city, so he transferred all the camera data in the past few months to Gina, and Corporal Park slowly checked it. In the video, Gina discovered that Ji-in returned home at 7:20 p.m. At around 1 a.m., the murderer also appeared in the elevator. He then went up to the 8th floor, but there was no image of him and Ji-in going down. It was highly likely that the two of them had moved through the stairwell. However, there were no cameras in that area. When examining the camera layout, Gina discovered that the building opposite had a camera pointing straight at the stairwell. They watched the video together. At around 4 a.m. that same day, a man threw down a suitcase and then he carried a person across the hallway. Based on the suitcase and clothes, Gina confirmed that the person was Ji-in. Ji-in was not missing, but had been kidnapped. The murderer became the #1 suspect. Meanwhile, the father followed the murderer to a fish farm. Because of his past trauma, he now used cat meat to feed the fish. The father felt that he was crazy. "Do you know who I am?" The murderer just smiled. The father angrily rushed to beat him. While beating him, the father shouted, "Where is my daughter?" The murderer shook his head and said he didn't know, but the father didn't believe him. He cut off the murderer's electronic leg cuffs. The father thought that if he died, no one would find his body. The father asked the murderer one last time if he would confess, but during the struggle, the two fell into the pond. Then, the father pulled the murderer to the shore and put him in the camper. Here the father continued to question him. The father said he would only stop when the murderer confessed. Even though the murderer cried and begged, the father did not soften. So the father drove the camper, towing his car, and left for another place. He was worried that the fish farm would soon be discovered by the police. That evening, Corporal Park took Gina home. She wanted to call her father to tell him that her sister had been kidnapped, but she called him many times, but he didn't pick up. Gina remembered that her father seemed very interested in the whereabouts of the murderer, so she suspected that he intended to find him to question him. Corporal Park promised to have someone locate her father and the murderer. Only then did Gina feel somewhat reassured. She went home to sleep, but by morning, her father still hadn't contacted her. Corporal Park also had no news. While Gina was worried, she heard a noise from upstairs, so she immediately ran upstairs to check. Her neighbor's boyfriend opened the door and apologized, but she immediately rushed out to accuse Gina of having an affair with her boyfriend. This made Gina even angrier. Gina decided that this time she had to get it right. The neighbors came to see and put more pressure on Gina. Luckily, her boyfriend tried to stop her until Gina let it go. When Gina returned to her room, she found a package left in front of her door. Even though she hadn't ordered anything, the recipient's name was Gina. She curiously opened it and saw that it was a sexy nightgown. It looked similar to the dress she had seen in Jian's wardrobe. Gina suddenly understood something. Seeing that the delivery man had not gone far, Gina immediately chased after him. But when Gina stopped the delivery vehicle, the delivery man said that he had not delivered the package to room 809. Gina was suspicious and observed more closely, and discovered a man riding a motorbike stealthily leaving, so she immediately chased after him and realized that it was Charlie. He hid in the supermarket but was still found by Gina. When Gina questioned Charlie, he still firmly denied sending the package. Gina saw that there was a security guard in the supermarket and immediately made a scene, accusing Charlie of being a harasser. She asked to check the security camera. The security guard had no choice but to agree. Through the camera, they discovered that Charlie did bring the parcel to the 8th floor. However, he argued that the 8th floor had many rooms and did not necessarily give it to Gina's room. At this time, Gina was determined to find out the truth. While Charlie was still confused, the president of the Women's Association suddenly appeared. She said that it was something she ordered. At the same time, she blamed Gina for causing chaos in the residential area since morning. Gina had to face everything alone. Gina argued with the president that she did it because someone was kidnapped. The president thought that Gina was delusional and ordered someone to take her out. Gina tried to resist but was still pushed away. Charlie also accidentally praised Gina as strong as her sister. From these signs, Gina became more convinced that Charlie was involved in the kidnapping. Not only him, but also the people living in the Rose Villa seemed to be covering for each other. Gina was alone, so she could not do anything. So she could only sit alone in the corner of the campus and call her boyfriend to complain. But he made an excuse that he was exercising and quickly hung up. In fact, he was having an affair with a female colleague. At that moment, it started to rain. Gina felt even more lonely and miserable. Fortunately, a small ray of light appeared in her life. Corporal Park came over and held an umbrella for her. He announced that he had located her father. Just as Gina had guessed, her father was with the murderer. Corporal Park would take her there. On the way, he listened to Gina pour out all the pent-up feelings. Meanwhile, the father brought food back to the camper for the murderer. He ordered the murderer to tell him where his daughter was being held after finished eating. If the murderer still did not tell him, he would use stronger measures. The father went back to the car to get a stapler. He stapled the murderer's shoulder to threaten him. Although the murderer was in pain, he still gritted his teeth and endured. The father lost his patience, so he grabbed the murderer's head and smashed it against the glass door. When he was about to attack harder, the murderer suddenly stabbed him, almost killing him. It turned out that the murderer used a can lid as a weapon. The father fell down and struggled. The murderer mocked him smugly. Later, Gina and Corporal Park also arrived. Seeing the dangerous situation, the murderer immediately ran away. Corporal Park discovered that the father was dying and called for help. Then he quickly chased after the murderer. The chase continued along the riverbank. The murderer climbed up the dam and tried to jump in. Corporal Park tried to convince him to calm down and said that as long as he was alive, everything could be negotiated. The murderer only left the phrase, "Love conquers all," in French, and then threw himself into the rushing water. Corporal Park was helpless and had to return to Gina and her father. At this time, her father had been taken to the ambulance ambulance. Gina also followed him to the hospital. Corporal Park stayed at the scene to handle the incident. Then he had to return to the police station to report to the captain. He was reprimanded by the captain for letting a subject under his control assault another person and then do something foolish. Corporal Park could only bow his head and listen to the scolding. At this time, no matter how he explained, he could not escape responsibility. That evening, Corporal Park went to the hospital to check on Gina. Gina's father had passed the critical stage, but still could not wake up. The youngest brother also ran to the hospital to find their father. Only then did Gina tell him that Ji-in was kidnapped. Before that, she did not dare to tell him so that he could study in peace. At that moment, the nurse came to announce that the family could visit patient. Gina led her younger brother in first, while Corporal Park stayed outside to wait. However, only one person was allowed to visit patient, so the younger brother followed the nurse in first. Gina stood outside, mumbling and praying that her father would definitely live, even though he had never treated her well. The next day, Gina returned to the Rose Villa. She took a shower and went to the balcony to relax. While thinking about what had happened, she accidentally noticed the one-way street in front of the Rose Villa. Gina seemed to realize something was unusual, so Gina immediately went to find the fat man to confirm. If the kidnapper took Ji-in by car, he must have gone through the one-way street. However, the security camera at the end of the street did not record any car leaving at 4 a.m. Gina suspected that her sister did not leave the villa but was hidden somewhere. The fat man also had a similar guess. Meanwhile, Corporal Park was still investigating Ji-in's kidnapping. He went to the research institute to ask, but was told that Ji-in had packed up her things and was preparing to transfer jobs. Finding no clues, he brought a female police officer to meet Ji-in's boyfriend. On the day of the kidnapping, he was on a business trip to Canada with the minister. The policewoman confirmed this information through the press. After returning to the country, Ji-in's boyfriend could not contact her, so he reported it to the police. At that time, Ji-in's family had just reported her missing. He worriedly asked Corporal Park if Ji-in was in danger. Corporal Park did not dare to confirm. Suddenly, Ji-in's boyfriend received an urgent call, so he asked permission to leave first. At the same time, Corporal Park also received a call from Gina, reporting a new clue. Corporal Park and the policewoman immediately returned to the Rose Villa. Here, Gina and the fat man were checking the security cameras. The camera in the opposite building looked towards the stairwell, but was blocked by trees. Gina and the fat man went down to the first floor and met Corporal Park again there. They decided to go to the area hidden from the camera to check. This place was the parking lot. The fat man analyzed as he walked. The building where the kidnapping took place was Building 117, and Building 116 opposite had a camera facing the stairs. There was a parking lot between the two buildings. If you walk down the one-way street to leave the villa, the camera at the end of the street would record it. However, there was no sign of the kidnapper and Ji-in leaving. The fat man found a path leading to buildings 118 and 119. This was probably the path the kidnapper used to escape. He had taken advantage of the blind spots in the security system, so he must have been someone who knew every corner of the Rose Villa. The fat man speculated that Ji-in might be hidden in building 118 or 119. Corporal Park also thought this was a high possibility, but a warrant was needed to search. Just suspicions were not enough for the police to act. Arbitrarily, disappointed, Gina went back to her room to clean up her things. While cleaning, Gina accidentally found the package containing the sexy nightgown from the day before. The package had the address of the shipping company, so she decided to go there to ask. However, this place only produced sample invoices for partners. If it was a real order, there would be a barcode. Gina asked for a list of partners who had received this sample invoice. Unexpectedly, the supermarket in the Rose Villa was also on the list. She was even more certain that Charlie was the one who sent the nightgown. When Gina returned to her room at night, she saw the fat guy fumbling around in front of the door. Turned out that Corporal Park was worried, so he asked him to install a camera in front of room 809. From now on, if anyone intentionally harassed Gina, they would be recorded. The fat guy connected the camera to Gina's laptop so she could monitor herself. After finishing, he asked to leave. Gina asked him to investigate more about the person named Charlie who was working at the supermarket in the Rose Villa. The fat guy was free to make a bid, so he happily accepted. When she entered the room, Gina called her boyfriend to talk, but he seemed sleepy. Gina was about to hang up when she suddenly heard another woman's voice next to her boyfriend. Only then did Gina know that he was having an affair. She was so heartbroken that she turned to alcohol. She called Corporal Park to confide in him. Gina burst into tears over what had just happened. Corporal Park could only comfort and encourage her. He said that he believed she was strong and that everything would be fine soon. The next morning, Gina woke up. She remembered that yesterday, Corporal Park asked her to find her sister's laptop. Gina immediately thought of the wooden box that her father had made for Gina and Ji-in to store their belongings. Sure enough, Ji-in had left the laptop there. Suddenly, received a call from the fat guy saying that he had found the information she needed, so Gina immediately set out to meet him. After the fat guy hacked Charlie's phone data, he discovered that Charlie was a very pervert. Charlie saved a lot of sensitive photos of girls, especially the photos that Ji-in posted on social media. It seems that Charlie has been targeting Ji-in for a long time. By chance, Gina discovered an unusual detail in one of Charlie's selfies. She immediately asked the fat guy to enlarge the image to check more closely. When she realized something important, Gina went to the supermarket. Gina waited for Charlie to close the supermarket and leave. Then she broke in. Here, Gina discovered a hunting gun and realized that Charlie was illegally killing animals. There were also horrifying mannequins that looked exactly like the mannequin hanging on her balcony. Before Gina could come to her senses, she suddenly heard a noise outside. Unfortunately for her, Charlie had returned to the supermarket. Gina quickly sent a text message for help. Corporal Park immediately set off after receiving the news. Charlie knew that someone had broken in, so he started searching everywhere. He took the shotgun and headed towards the area where there were mannequins. While Charlie was busy searching, Gina quickly escaped. However, Charlie quickly discovered and chased after her. He was extremely excited because he felt like he was in a real chase. However, Gina ran very fast and Charlie couldn't catch up with her, so he was extremely frustrated. Gina panicked and hid on the roof of the supermarket. Luckily, Corporal Park appeared in time. He introduced himself as a patrol police officer. Charlie heard that and had to leave. Then Corporal Park pulled Gina aside to scold her for doing such a dangerous thing. Gina then told him about the new discoveries from the fat guy. It was possible that Charlie had been following Ji-in for a long time. Gina wanted to investigate further to find evidence. Corporal Park heard that the fat guy had hacked again without permission, so he was angry and went to the fat guy's house to handcuff him as a warning. Gina immediately tried her best to convince him and took all the responsibility on herself. Gina also declared that if Corporal Park did not remove the handcuffs from the fat man, she would turn herself in to the police station for her illegal actions. In the end, Corporal Park had to be lenient and let the fat man go. Gina wanted to take him out for a barbecue to apologize for dragging him into this. At the bar, Corporal Park told Gina that her sister's kidnapping case had been transferred to another team. Now, he no longer had the right to investigate. When he heard that the new team leader in charge of the case was Mr. Jang, the fat man showed no interest in him because he was famous for falsifying evidence. As long as there was money, even the right thing could become wrong. Corporal Park still encouraged Gina that team leader Jang was a capable person after all, because falsifying evidence was not a simple matter. For the time being, Corporal Park would monitor Mr. Jang's actions. If there was anything unusual, he would not abandon Gina halfway. After eating and drinking, Corporal Park took Gina back. When she went to her room, Gina realized that she forgot to give Jian's laptop to Corporal Park. Gina opened the laptop to check and found a strange file. Gina tried to open the file, but the computer asked for a password, so she texted Corporal Park. Unexpectedly, her message was secretly monitored by a girl from afar. Knowing that Gina had found Jian's laptop, the girl smiled sinisterly. The next day, Gina went to see the apartment manager to ask for a list of cars parked in the basement. She wanted to check the black box for clues, but the manager did not agree. At that moment, a woman ran over to complain about the foul smell of the tap water. She asked for permission to check the water tank. The manager only made empty promises to avoid responsibility. Seeing that, Gina decided to follow the woman. Gina asked for a bottle of water in her room and brought it to the manager's desk. In addition to Ji-in's disappearance, Gina speculates that Ji-in's body is decomposing in the water tank. The manager suggests that Gina go to the police to ask for a search warrant and then talk. Gina goes to the police station to ask for Corporal Park's help, but accidentally lets Captain Jang hear the story. Corporal Park has no choice but to take Gina to a coffee shop because he no longer has the authority to investigate the case and cannot help her get a search warrant. However, Gina still trusts Corporal Park. She also gives him her sister's laptop. In order to not disappoint Gina's trust, Corporal Park begins to investigate the suspect, Charlie. However, on the day of the incident, Charlie has an alibi. Corporal Park is at a loss for how to continue the investigation. Suddenly, he discovers a police convoy arriving at the Rose Villa. It turns out that Captain Jang has already gotten a search warrant. Except for his bad personality, he was indeed a capable person. The police quickly quickly sealed off the villa and then divided up to search everywhere. The residents there were extremely confused. Captain Jang used a search warrant to ask the manager to open the rooftop to check the water tank. If there was no result this time, he would not be able to explain to the chief, so he was trying his best. Very quickly, the police had results. There was indeed a body underneath the water tank. Gina heard the news and wanted to ask Corporal Park to take her up to confirm. Corporal Park used his police identity to take Gina up to the rooftop to check, but the people from Team 1 did not let them in. Corporal Park was extremely angry because according to the procedure, when a body was found, the victim's family had to confirm the identity, so Captain Jang had no choice but to let two of them in. Although the clothes were very similar, this was not Jin but Charlie's crazy mother. When the police carried the body down, Charlie cried in pain. The police took his statement, but he didn't know anything because the crazy woman usually ran around and disappeared for a few days without anyone noticing. The police had to retreat first. Gina was helped downstairs by Corporal Park when she suddenly received a phone call from her younger brother. He reported that her father had just woken up. Gina immediately ran to the hospital. The first thing her father asked Gina was if she had found Ji-in yet. This made Gina extremely angry. She was sad because she had run everywhere, but in the end, her father didn't ask her a single question. Gina spoke a little loudly so everyone around could hear, so her younger brother had to take her outside to calm down. At this time, he wanted to ask Gina about Ji-in's personality. In Gina's eyes, Ji-in was a perfect person with a smooth job and career, but her younger brother insisted that Ji-in was not as good as she appeared because she had hidden many things from her family. He took out his phone and showed Gina a video. It was a girl in revealing clothes dancing sexily on a live stream. Gina realized that the person in the video was none other than Ji-in. It turned out that this was the dark side that her sister had been hiding for so long. However, Gina was sure that there was a hidden reason, because why would someone as rich as Ji-in have to show off their body to make money? To explain that, they had to find Ji-in first. Meanwhile, in another place, someone else saw this live stream. It was the neighbor's sister. She smiled contemptuously when she discovered that Ji-in was a bad girl. She bragged about her discovery to her boyfriend. She even expressed that she would make it public for the residents of the villa. Her boyfriend wanted to stop her because Ji-in was still missing anyway. If Ji-in's family found out about this, they would be in even more of a crisis. But she didn't care. She just spread the video throughout the apartment building. Everyone who saw the video talked excitedly. It turns out that she is a prostitute, but she pretends to be gentle to attract men. The insults from the neighbors quickly reached the president's ears. Everyone wanted to chase Ji-in's family away, but the president just kept quiet. Later, a short-haired girl came to find the president. She wanted to talk privately, so everyone went outside. At this moment, the short-haired girl suddenly slapped the president repeatedly in the face. However, the strange thing was that the president did not fight back. The short-haired girl blamed the president for letting the death happen in the Rose Villa. This affected her plan. At this point, the president could not hold it in anymore and said, "I am not your dog." The short-haired girl intended to slap the president again. Unexpectedly, the president counterattacked. She grabbed the short-haired girl's hair and warned her that even if she had someone to back her up, I could handle it in just a few seconds. The president threw water on the short-haired girl's face and chased her away. The short-haired girl could only leave angrily. Meanwhile, the police were conducting an autopsy and they found a key in the crazy woman's mouth. The forensic doctor then reported the results of the autopsy to Captain Jang. The victim fell into the water tank and drowned, not murdered and dumped. The forensic doctor returned the key to Captain Jang. The forensic doctor also confirmed that the victim swallowed the key herself and no one stuffed it into her mouth. What was puzzling was that the crazy woman's coat belonged to Ji-in and had her DNA on it. Captain Jang wondered what these details had to do with case, but the forensic doctor said that he was only in charge of the autopsy and the investigation was the police's responsibility. The forensic doctor then hurriedly left, leaving Captain Jang standing there, thinking. Captain Jang handed the key to the bespectacled policeman and asked him to find the corresponding lock. After the police left, Gina returned to the scene. There she found her sister's necklace that she had dropped in the tank containing the mad woman's body. Suddenly, someone appeared. Turned out to be Corporal Park. Gina took Corporal Park to another place to talk. She showed him the necklace she had just picked up, which was a relic her mother had left for Ji-in. From the marks on the necklace, it could be seen that someone had deliberately ripped it off. Gina remembered that the mad woman had also tried to steal her necklace before, so she guessed that the necklace was probably stolen from Ji-in by the mad woman. Gina believed that the mad woman definitely knew where Ji-in was, but now she had passed away. Gina felt extremely helpless. Suddenly, she remembered something. She showed Corporal Park the video of Ji-in dancing. However, Corporal Park did not believe that the character in the video was Ji-in. He took Gina to meet the fat man. After analyzing the video, the fat man also confirmed that this was not Ji-in. This was actually just a product of deepfake technology. Accordingly, Ji-in's face was attached to an existing video. The faker was so sophisticated that even the fat man could not detect it if he did not recognize it through his eyes. Gina wondered who was behind this and what his purpose was. The fat man just smiled and said he did not know either, but Corporal Park said that it was necessary to investigate because this was an act of insulting another person's honor. This act could be punished by up to 7 years in prison. The fat man had a lot of experience in this matter. In the evening, Gina returned home. She knew that the president of the association opened a massage service, so she wanted to go there to relax. She also took the opportunity to learn more about the situation in the villa area. At first, the president did not agree, but after Gina promised to pay double, she immediately changed her attitude. The president leads Gina to the massage room, where the neighbors are gossiping about the murder that just happened. Someone mentions Charlie, who benefits the most after the crazy woman dies, because the crazy woman owns a lot of assets, including the Rose Villa. The president asks Gina to take off her shirt for a massage, but she is shot and only exposes her shoulders. The president starts to press the acupressure points to help Gina relax. After the massage, Gina returns to her room and goes to sleep, but at this time, the couple upstairs is arguing again. Suddenly, a man in black appears in the hallway. He sprays smoke into the camera in front of Gina's room. Then he breaks into the house to look for something. He accidentally makes a noise that wakes Gina up. The man in black immediately takes out a knife and restrains her. He searches for the laptop and forces Gina to hand it over. However, Gina quickly throws the laptop out the window, causing the man in black to angrily beat her. He also tried to strangle Gina to death. Gina fell into a coma and was dragged into the bathroom by the man in black. When she woke up, she found her hands and feet tied tightly and water was pouring into the tub. Gina struggled to call for help. The man in black had gone down to the first floor to pick up the laptop. He was disappointed to find that it was only Gina's laptop, and what he wanted to find was Jian's laptop. Meanwhile, Corporal Park went to see a female police officer who had been demoted. She is currently a traffic police officer. She was checking the alcohol concentration of a thug when he harassed her. The policewoman pulled out a gun to control the thug without knowing that Corporal Park was standing nearby. Corporal Park rushed in to control the thug and his subordinates to teach him a lesson. Corporal Park instructed the thug to blow the alcohol concentration and warned that I could revoke his driver's license and take him to the police station for resisting a law enforcement officer. Suddenly, Corporal Park received a distress call from Gina, so he quickly left the scene. At this time, Gina was trying to cut the rope. Then, she quickly left the room. When the man in black returned and didn't see Gina, he searched for her. But luckily, Corporal Park found Gina first. He put a coat on her and took her to the car. Gina didn't want to go to the hospital because she was afraid her family would worry. So Corporal Park had to take her home. As soon as she entered the house, Gina wanted to take a shower. Corporal Park was confused and didn't know what to do, so he sneaked out to the supermarket to buy her personal items. He didn't know what Gina needed, so he took all the female items. When he saw Corporal Park bring back a bunch of things, Gina was extremely touched, because from childhood until now, no one, not even her boyfriend or family, had cared about her like that. As for Corporal Park, he thought this was what women deserve. Then Corporal Park decided to go to Gina's house to investigate. He asked her to give him the password and left her here to wait. Gina slept until morning and still hadn't seen Corporal Park return. It turned out that he didn't dare wake Gina up and quietly took care of the plants in the garden. Gina also wanted to help Corporal Park bring the plants into the house, and he showed her how to grow plants in water. Gina wished she was like a tree that could start a new life just by changing its environment. Corporal Park encouraged Gina that people could be like that too. Find a new place to live and start over. But Gina was still pessimistic. She thought that people couldn't be like trees. A damaged tree could be cut off to grow again, but a bad reputation would follow a person for life. Corporal Park had to change the subject. He asked Gina where they could put the plants. Gina helped him put the plants on the table. At this moment, Corporal Park suddenly received a phone call. He asked the policewoman to analyze Jian's computer and now had the results. The female police officer discovered that someone who was paying special attention to Jian was the president of the Women's Association. She had visited Jian's room many times, but Jian did not open the door. It seemed that Jian had an important report related to the president's secret. She warned Jian that if she deliberately sent the report, it would not reach the destination and Jian would put herself in a disadvantageous situation. situation. But Ji-in still firmly held her ground and sent the president away. Back to reality, Corporal Park took Gina home. Unexpectedly, her boyfriend also came to see her. Gina had nothing to say to him, but her boyfriend still tried to hold on. The two went to a restaurant to talk. Gina wanted to save face for her boyfriend, so she asked him to let her go. But he criticized Gina for going with another guy. Gina did not hesitate to expose that he had slept with another girl while she was away. He tried to deny it, but Gina angrily left. Corporal Park returned to the police station and reported the break-in last night to Captain Jang. After all, he was investigating Ji-in's kidnapping. It was possible that the man in black who broke in last night was related to the kidnapper. Captain Jang did not hear the whole story and immediately scolded Corporal Park. He said that he was not allowed to interfere in the case of Team 1. Corporal Park still endured and asked Captain Jang to send someone to Gina's house to investigate. He immediately asked his subordinates to leave. Corporal Park returned to his desk when the policewoman sent him a photo from Ji-in's computer. A colleague happened to see it. He recognized it as a photo of the Tower of Heaven related to a cult. Under the guidance of Corporal Park's colleague, he went to see a professor who studied religion. He told Corporal Park that the Tower of Heaven was a place where believers gathered to repent. In the year 2000, this cult entered Korea, causing a drastic change in culture. The number of their followers increased dramatically. There were also frequent cases of followers committing mass foolishness. They worshipped a leader who claimed to represent God, but in reality, they were worshipping a devil. No follower dared to oppose the leader. At that time, the leader always had a close female subordinate with him. Later, because of their extreme actions, the cult was purged by the government. All the followers were arrested. Only the female subordinate escaped. She was even more cunning and difficult to deal with. The real leader was Han Hongju. Corporal Park felt like he had seen this person somewhere before, but he couldn't remember. At this time, Captain Jang led people to Gina's house to investigate the scene. Unexpectedly, someone had cleaned the bathroom. Everyone was confused. At that moment, they suddenly heard a noise on the balcony. Gina opened the window and found her sister about to do something stupid there. Gina panicked and called the police for help. But at this moment, Ji-in whispered to Gina that it was all her fault. Gina didn't have time to think and asked the police to call an ambulance for Ji-in. A moment later, Ji-in was taken away by ambulance. The residents of the villa gathered around to watch the commotion. Captain Jang led his subordinates away first to avoid the attention of reporters. However, they later heard that Ji-in had passed away before being taken to the hospital. This news made her brother extremely confused. Gina hid in the house, heartbroken. She saw her sister do something stupid right in front of her and couldn't do anything. Moreover, her sister left a sentence saying that it was all your fault. This made Gina even more heartbroken. Corporal Park waited outside for Gina, but she refused to open the door. Finally, Corporal Park had to leave her alone. The next day, Charlie went to the police station to confess and admit that he was kidnapper. He met Corporal Park outside the door. Corporal Park wanted to know what Charlie would say, so he went to see the policewoman and asked her to go to Team 1 to investigate. Corporal Park said that today's meal was considered payment. Not giving the policewoman a chance to refuse, Corporal Park quickly left. That evening, Corporal Park brought food to Gina. At this time, she still could not accept the truth and kept wondering why it was her fault. Gina kept thinking about her sister's last words. Corporal Park encouraged her. He thought that there must be something hidden in the incident. He would help her find the truth. Meanwhile, the policewoman went to the policeman with glasses to inquire about the progress of the investigation. The policeman wearing glasses did not hesitate to tell everything. Today, Charlie came to the police station to confess because he posted Jian's sensitive videos online. However, all the videos were edited. Charlie was arrested for defamation. In the case of the crazy woman, after the policeman wearing glasses was sent by Captain Jang to find the lock, he also brought the key to try to insert it into all the locks in the Rose Villa. But the result was that none of the locks matched. He gave up and put the key in the evidence room, considering it useless evidence. Taking this opportunity, the female policeman wanted to ask for the key. She promised to help the policeman wearing glasses find the difficult lock, but on one condition: he had to put in a good word with the captain so that she could be reinstated. The policeman wearing glasses did not think much and immediately gave her the key. At this time, Gina went to the hospital to see her father. Looking at her expression, her father knew that something had happened to Ji-in. Gina did not want to hide it and told her father that her sister had done something stupid. The father was extremely distressed. The next day, the police got the autopsy results. It turned turned out that Jian did not do something stupid but was actually strangled. Someone had made it look like she did something stupid. The forensic doctor added that there was a wound on the back of Jian's head, but that was not the cause of Jian's death. Police wearing glasses speculated that it would not be easy to hang a grown woman. The murderer must have had help. Captain Jang heard this and realized that this case was not simple. The police also investigated that the bra Gina gave Jipol in was not a custom-made item as she said, but a gift for a VIP guest to the hotel. This meant that Gina deliberately lied to frame the murderer. Moreover, this was not the first time Gina had witnessed a missing person case like this. 3 years ago, her boyfriend also disappeared and was eventually found drowned in a lake. Captain John felt that Gina was the one with the problem. He immediately asked his subordinates to check her alibi for the day. Jean was kidnapped. Jean's funeral was taking place at the time. Many people came to pay their respects. After all, Jean was the head of the research institute before. Gina's colleagues at the hotel also came to pay their respects. They reminded Gina that police had come to the hotel to investigate and found out that she lied. They warned her that if she didn't want to be made difficult by the manager, she'd better not return to work at the hotel. Gina thanked her colleague for her sincere advice. Meanwhile, the female police officer also informed Corporal Park about what she had knew from the police officer with glasses. Corporal Park knew that Charlie was the one who posted Jian's video online, but he was still released. Corporal Park angrily went to the supermarket. There, Corporal Park beat Charlie up, even though this action would cost him his job. But Corporal Park couldn't stand a bastard like Charlie any longer. After venting his anger, Corporal Park went to find Gina. The two confided in each other. Seeing that Gina was truly heartbroken over Jian's death, Corporal Park believed that she was a good sister. Gina reciprocated his trust by leaning on Corporal Park's shoulder. She also trusted him. All of Corporal Park's actions during the past proved it. At midnight, Charlie was about to close the supermarket. He seemed very upset, so he called his friend to tell him that he was beaten today and that the store was slow. Charlie wished someone would deal with Corporal Park. At that moment, a dark figure appeared in the supermarket. The man in black didn't say much, but directly used a knife to kill Charlie on the spot. The next day, the police arrived at the scene. Although there were many bloodstains, they didn't find a body or a murder weapon. Corporal Park went inside to check. He wondered where the murderer could have taken the victim. At this time, Jean had already been cremated. Everyone was in pain and crying, except Gina, who did not shed a single tear. Her father questioned Gina as to why she did not cry after her sister died. Gina remained cold and did not respond, making her father extremely angry. After returning home, Gina did not say goodbye, but left the Rose Villa directly. Her younger brother wanted to hold her back, but failed. Suddenly, Gina received a call from Captain Jang. He wanted her to come to the police station to cooperate with the investigation. Gina volunteered to do so. In the interrogation room, Captain Jang got straight to the point. Eliminating all relatives, Gina became the #1 suspect in the Jian murder case. According to what Captain Jang heard, Gina was good at lying and arguing. She answered his questions without blinking an eye. Captain Jang took out Jian's bra as evidence. This was not a custom-made item, as Gina said. He asked why Gina wanted to frame the murderer. Gina replied that she was in a hurry to find her sister at the time, so she wanted to quickly identify the suspect. Captain Jang continued to ask about her alibi for the day of the kidnapping. As usual, Gina went to work, then went on a date and went shopping with her boyfriend. She returned to her room around 9 p.m. According to Captain Jang's calculations, there was a gap in time. This was enough time for Gina to take the train from Busan to Seoul and kidnap her sister. Furthermore, Gina also used Jian's identity to go on a dating app. Captain Jang speculated that Gina wanted to replace her sister. Gina immediately retorted that she could not do this with her own strength. Captain Jang said that he discovered that kidnapper had an accomplice, so Gina had to continue listening to Captain Jang's analysis. First, the murderer would return to check and stage the crime scene after kidnapping Jian. Therefore, Gina asked for leave from the hotel to go home and prepare everything, so she was the first person to discover the crime scene. Second, there must be a double that Gina used, the psychopath murderer. Taking advantage of his hobby of killing cats, Gina left traces of cat blood in the house. That way, she could turn the murderer into a suspect. Third, to destroy the evidence, Gina provoked her father to take her place in dealing with the murderer. Finally, Gina had to turn herself into a victim so that no one would suspect her. She asked her accomplices to pretend to attack her in the room. If the man in black really did it, Gina would not be alive. Captain Jang was suspicious of how the murderer could enter and exit the room so easily, unless it was someone in the house. Everything Gina arranged really became a perfect play. Captain Jang also mentioned Gina's boyfriend's death. He questioned her if she had also staged it 3 years ago. According to his investigation, her ex-boyfriend was a former swimmer, so how could he have drowned? Gina's face suddenly darkened darkened, and her eyes became sharp. Captain Jang would definitely find the truth. Today ended here. Gina left the police station. The reporters surrounded Gina to get news, but she had no strength left. Corporal Park immediately ran to support. Now only he trusted Gina. In the evening, Captain Jang received another forensic report. On Jian's body, NPK-12 chemical fertilizer was also found, a high-grade fertilizer used for plants. In Jian's fingernails, there were some parasitic sundew seeds. Its scientific name is capensis. However, Jian's house did not grow that kind of plant. If they knew the origin of these things, it would definitely be an important clue. Suddenly, the police officer wearing glasses remembered that the person who often chatted with Gina when she used Jian's dating app was also named Capensis. Captain John suspected that this might be Gina's accomplice. He asked the police officer wearing glasses to collect all the chat content and find out who Capensis was. The next morning, the policewoman took the key and wandered around the apartment building, but still could not find the lock. She thought that the lock might have been changed. Even so, she was determined to find it. She went to the residential area's garbage dump. The owner of the dump showed her where the residents of the Rose Villa dumped their old things. The policewoman searched from morning to night, silently praying that she would find it, and finally her prayer was answered. The policewoman found a doorknob that matched the key. She immediately brought it to the evidence room to identify the fingerprints on the doorknob. Later, the female police officer received a call from the captain, so she immediately ran to the barbecue restaurant where everyone was gathered. It turned out that the captain of Team 2 was also secretly investigating the case. He found the same clue as Team 1, which was that the crime might be related to plants. Coincidentally, Corporal Park was a person who was knowledgeable about plants. He sat and talked endlessly about plants. The captain began to suspect that Corporal Park and Gina were accomplices because the two of them were quite close. After drinking, Corporal Park went to the Rose Villa, but he remembered that Gina had left. He called, but Gina did not answer. Corporal Park had no choice but to leave a voice message for Gina, but was accidentally discovered by Gina's boyfriend. He immediately followed Corporal Park into the path leading to buildings 118 and 119, and then he did not return. The next morning, Captain Jang received a notice that Capensis, whose real name is Park Hong-jun, was born in 1965. He used a fake identity to text Gina. His address was also fake. Park Hong-jun went missing about 15 years ago and suddenly returned. Captain Jang did not believe in such a miracle. He guessed that someone might have used Park Hong-jun's identity to hide in the Rose Villa and cause a stir. Captain John asked the police officer wearing glasses to investigate whether anyone named Park Hong-jun was living in the villa. At this time, Gina received a call from her younger brother saying that her boyfriend came over last night. Gina went to the pharmacy to remind him to stop bothering her, but he did not go to work today. Gina had no choice but to send him a text message, not knowing that Corporal Park was holding her boyfriend's phone. This was a room full of lush green plants, but inside came a pitiful pleading sound. It turns out that Corporal Park is a perverted narcissist. He believes that what Gina has to endure is due to Jian's standards. Jian always wants Gina to be perfect like her. Because Jian and Gina don't get along, Corporal Park kidnapped Jian and locked her in this room full of plants. Thanks to that, Gina moved back to the Rose Villa. Corporal Park rented a room in the building opposite Gina's room to observe her activities every day. Last night, when Corporal Park returned to the room, Gina's boyfriend followed him to the 11th floor where Corporal Park lived. Unfortunately, he was dragged into the room and detained there. Meanwhile, the female police officer went to the evidence room to ask about the fingerprint identification results on the doorknob. Unexpectedly, the results showed that it was Corporal Park's fingerprint. The policewoman couldn't believe her ears. She told herself that there must be some mistake here. She believed that Corporal Park couldn't be the criminal, so she decided to go find the captain of Team 2. However, today the captain's expression was also very strange. It seemed that he knew something. When the policewoman wanted to report her discovery, the captain immediately chased the other subordinates out. He advised the policewoman not to get involved in this case anymore. Let Team 1 handle everything. The captain didn't want to personally arrest his subordinates. Now she could only hope that Corporal Park wasn't the culprit. He continued, if the worst happened, the policewoman should go and persuade Corporal Park to turn himself in. However, the policewoman always insisted that Corporal Park wasn't the culprit. She wanted to go find Corporal Park to ask for clarification. Captain Jang's side also received the news as he had guessed. They had found a person named Park Hong-jun living in the Rose Villa. That person rented a house about 5 years ago in room 1104 of building 118. Captain Jang was overjoyed and immediately sent a team to go. At this time, Gina's boyfriend was trying to convince Corporal Park to spare him. At the same time, he kept criticizing Gina. He said that she was not worthy of Corporal Park's protection. Gina was a cunning person who only knew how to put on a fake pitiful face and only told lies. But Corporal Park loved Gina, so he didn't listen to him. Corporal Park questioned back that if he didn't come to Gina to take advantage of her, Corporal Park wouldn't be sitting here. The stupid boyfriend kept insulting Gina. Corporal Park got even angrier and was about to send him to the other world. At this moment, there was suddenly the sound of a police car outside. Corporal Park knew that he had been discovered, so he immediately ran away. The police stormed into the house. Captain Jang divided his men to block the area. A group went to the emergency exit and accidentally encountered Corporal Park, who was wearing a mask similar to the man in black. He quickly dealt with the police and escaped. Captain Jang's side went to room 1104 and found Gina's boyfriend lying there. He immediately ordered his subordinates to untie him. Gina's boyfriend reminded the police that the perpetrator who beat him had just escaped. Captain Jang contacted them, but the sub-team at the emergency exit did not respond. When he arrived, he found everyone lying on the ground. Another police officer took Gina's boyfriend to the hospital, while Captain Jang returned to the room to search. He discovered binoculars used to monitor room 809 and even a wiretap. Captain Jang received a report from his subordinates that he had lost track of the perpetrator. Captain Jang ordered a quick search and called another team to Gina's house to search. Indeed, they found a wiretap installed in the room. Later, the police returned to the station and took Gina's boyfriend's statement. He confirmed that the murderer was the policeman who was with Gina, and he confirmed it through the photo of Corporal Park. Captain Jang was extremely surprised. Suddenly, a subordinate ran in to inform that the policewoman requested reinforcements. The location was Corporal Park's house. Captain Jang asked to leave immediately. On the other side, the policewoman pointed a gun at Corporal Park and advised him to turn himself in. Corporal Park asked the policewoman for some time to meet the important person one last time. The policewoman was extremely embarrassed and a little heartbroken. She said that the captain also knew about his situation and wanted to give him a chance to make things right. But Corporal Park only cared about a woman, forgetting about his teammates. The policewoman put down her gun and agreed to let Corporal Park leave. He asked her to apologize to the captain and quickly escaped from the house. The police rushed in and discovered Corporal Park and immediately surrounded him. Corporal Park attacked them and ran away. The police quickly chased after him, but after a while, they still couldn't catch Corporal Park. He ran out into the street and was suddenly hit by Captain Jang's car. Corporal Park was surrounded, so he grabbed the policeman with glasses and took him hostage. He even had the heart to shoot his teammates and then threw the policeman with glasses back to everyone. Corporal Park hid in the forest. Captain Jang chased after him angrily, but couldn't catch up. After escaping from the police, Corporal Park went to the fat man and asked him to prepare a phone that couldn't be tracked. The fat man didn't understand what was going on with Corporal Park, but still agreed to do it. Corporal Park also stole the car that the fat man had just bought. When the fat man realized it, it was too late. However, the fat man's car had a tracking device installed. It turned out that this was actually his plan with President of the Women's Association. She used Corporal Park and Gina as puppets to carry out her terrifying plan. At this time, Gina was deep in thought. Suddenly, she received a call from a female police officer. The female police officer asked Gina to advise Corporal Park to surrender because he probably only listened to her now. Hearing that, Gina immediately took the train to Seoul. When Gina arrived, the female police officer took her to room 1104. Gina wondered if Corporal Park loved Ji-in, but the female police officer was not sure. Gina wanted to be alone, so the female police officer had to leave. Gina walked around the room and observed it. It turned out that this was where Corporal Park looked at her every day. He also took pictures of Gina's beautiful moments and hung them all over the house. Gina was extremely heartbroken because she had only just discovered it now. After that, Gina went to the hospital to visit her father and told him the whole truth. Her father and younger brother were extremely surprised. They couldn't believe that Corporal Park was such a person. At this time, Gina asked the question, did her father ever suspect that she was the one who killed her sister? He couldn't answer. However, she could easily guess her father's answer. She sadly went out to think. Suddenly, Corporal Park appeared, took the anesthetic, and took Gina away. The next day, Gina woke up in a simple house. This was Corporal Park's house in the countryside. As soon as she saw him, Gina was scared and backed away. She asked what was going on. Corporal Park advised Gina to sit down calmly and he would tell her everything. When he was young, Corporal Park lived with his father and mother, but his father was addicted to gambling and alcohol. His father often beat his mother. His father also scolded him for being useless. One day, Corporal Park couldn't bear it anymore, so he used a knife to send his father to the other world. From now on, he only had his mother. His mother wanted to cover for him, so she buried her husband's body in the backyard. Then she planted a tree on the grave. Gradually, Corporal Park grew up, and the tree grew strong. His mother wanted him to forget his past and become a police officer. After a while, she passed away. Corporal Park was left alone. When Corporal Park was a trainee police officer, he accidentally met Gina, who went to the police station to file a complaint. Corporal Park fell in love with her at first sight. Since then, he secretly followed Gina. He discovered that Gina was a person with many secrets. This further stimulated his curiosity. He pretended to be Park Hong-joon to rent room 1104 opposite Gina's building. From there, he could observe her more easily. At the same time, he also became friends with Gina on social media 3 years ago. When he found out that she had a boyfriend, Corporal Park secretly dealt with her boyfriend. Then he faked a drowning incident. He wanted Gina to belong to him alone. On the day Gina argued with Ji-in and left to live in Busan, Corporal Park was extremely desperate. Adding to his anger towards Ji-in, he planned his revenge for a year and brought Gina back to room 809. Corporal Park confessed to kidnapping Ji-in and keeping her in the house. He used the murderer as a substitute because the murderer was a mental patient with short-term memory. Everything went according to his plan. After Ji-in was kidnapped, Gina returned. Corporal Park told Gina that all his actions were out of love for her, but Gina thought he was nothing more than a psychopath. He did not deny it. As long as Gina said it, it was true. When Gina wanted to see her sister again, Corporal Park decided to bring Ji-in back, but he found out that Ji-in had disappeared. Someone else took Ji-in away, and that was the man in black who appeared in Gina's house. He was not Corporal Park because Corporal Park would not hurt Gina. As long as Gina told the police about this, Corporal Park was sure that the police would quickly find the man in black. Captain Jang was a very capable person. At that time, Corporal Park would be cleared of his name, and Gina would also find the real murderer of her sister. Gina's feelings were extremely mixed at this moment. She hated Corporal Park, but could not take revenge on him. Moreover, what he said made her extremely confused, because there was still someone targeting her family. Meanwhile, Captain Jang was still very angry because he had not found Corporal Park. Captain Jang asked the captain of Team 2 if he knew where his subordinate was, but the captain of Team 2 did not care because this was not his case. So the two sides started to get tense and almost started fighting. Luckily, their subordinates stopped them. After that, the two of them sat down and talked calmly. The captain of the second team knew that Corporal Park was really the kidnapper, but he didn't believe that Corporal Park could kill someone. Captain Jang thought the same. He thought that if he wanted to clear things up, he had to find Corporal Park first. Suddenly, the captain of the second team remembered that Corporal Park still had a house in the countryside. Captain Jang immediately sent people on the road, but this time, they were still a step too late. After sending Gina back, Corporal Park did something stupid to pay for his crime. At this time, the policewoman was sitting dejectedly at Gina's house. She wanted to find evidence to prove Corporal Park's innocence, but she still hadn't found any. After the policewoman finished eating the cake, she went to the bathroom to wash her hands, and unexpectedly, there she accidentally discovered blood stains on the water tank. It turned out that the masked man had dropped it. The female police officer immediately took a blood sample and brought it to the forensic room. Unexpectedly, the blood did not belong to Corporal Park, but to a stranger. At the same time, the president of the Women's Association came to meet the stranger. She introduced herself as Han Hong-ju, a subordinate of the new cult leader. The movie ends here. Thank you for your attention and watching. Goodbye and see you again.